There is a specific kind of heaviness that shows up in Filipino families, the kind that settles in your chest the moment you realize you'll be in the same room as the relative who has caused your family years of pain. This is so especially true because the holidays are coming up as we record this. It's that quiet internal bracing, the subtle tightening of your jaw, the mental rehearsing of what do I say? Do I say hi first? Do I avoid them? Or will I look disrespectful if I protect my peace? And so, for many of us Filipinos, this isn't just social discomfort, it's a moral dilemma because our culture tells us respect your elders no matter what. But our mental health says, I cannot handle one more interaction like that. So today's Ask Dr. Net Thursdays, this letter sits right at the painful intersection. And the moment I read it, I felt the weight of what this person has been holding. And before we dive deeper into this powerful story, I just wanted to greet everyone. Magandang umaga, hapon, or gabi po sa inyong lahat. My name is Dr. Ned. I'm a Filipino-American clinical psychologist dedicated to helping Filipinos worldwide heal generational trauma through inner child healing, ancestral wisdom, and kapwa psychology. I was born and raised in the Philippines, and I immigrated here in the States as a young adult and later pursued grad studies in San Francisco. And as a first gen immigrant, I bring both professional and personal insight into the healing journey. Because having grown up with anxiety and trauma myself, I deeply understand what it means to face mental health challenges without any support or resources. And all of my lived experiences inspired me to create the Brown Psych, a space that makes, and also the Healing Collective, by the way. These are spaces that make healing accessible while honoring culture, heritage, and community. And I'll tell you more about the Healing Collective in a little bit. Again, just a disclaimer, this video is for educational purposes only. This is not therapy. I am not your therapist, and I am not here to diagnose or give you a substitute for your professional mental health care. I don't know the full details of your life, so take what resonates and gently leave what doesn't. So here is the question verbatim. This is from an Instagram follower. And by the way, we will also put in the description if you want to give me future questions that you have, and we will answer it here in the Brown Psych on Thursdays. So here's the message exactly as it was sent to me. What do you do when you have an auntie that has caused you and your immediate family so much pain, yet you still force yourself to be respectful, even if she doesn't respect you and your family? My mom has an estranged sister where in the last year when our Lola got sick and passed away, it got even worse. Her daughter is like my second sister, but my mom, sister, and I have never seen eye to eye with my auntie. My mom goes months or even years without talking to her unless she really has to. And my mom is the youngest of four, and my auntie is the second oldest sister. Recently, I was told that we might be in the same event. And I told my mom I'm not going to say hi at first. She can say hi to me and I'll be respectful, but I'm not going to go out of my way just because she's my elder. It's annoying sometimes because I'd rather not see or speak with her for my own mental sanity. But my mom knows where I'm coming from. But it's always like, you still have to acknowledge her. She's still your Lola's daughter and my cousin's mom. And your Lola would want you to. So then I feel guilty because I cannot handle her sometimes and would rather not put myself in a situation that involves her. Let's take a deep breath because I wanted to thank you again for this question, first of all. But this really touches a very deep Filipino wound. Because how do we protect our peace in a culture that demands unconditional respect towards elders, even when they have caused you pain or maybe even harm? So I want to break this down gently from one layer to the next, and I want to talk about 5 points. So the first point is Filipino respect is often about hierarchy, not safety. It used to not be that way before we were colonized, but then here we are, right? So now in our culture, respect is usually defined by age, birth order, the hierarchy, the obligation, the tradition, pagpapakatao, or proper behavior. And not necessarily by kindness, accountability, or emotional safety. And so our inner child was taught that elders are always right, or respect them even if they hurt you, or family over feelings, or be polite even when it feels unsafe. But here's the honest truth: respect without reciprocity is not respect, it's conditioning, and it harms our nervous system. Your confusion, by the way, is also not a personal flaw. It's a psychological conflict between who you were trained to be and who you are becoming. Point number two: estrangement is common in Filipino families, but we do not talk about it. You described something very real, honestly. Siblings not speaking with each other for years, or wounds that go unresolved, conflict avoidance as a survival strategy, contact only when required, or family fractures triggered by illness or death. This is something I see constantly when I see my Filipino American therapy clients, or in the Healam Collective, or in the 6-week inner child healing workshops that I facilitate. And we have just finished last summer our third batch, you know? And so your mom going months or years without talking to her sister, that's emotional protection. She is honestly practicing that emotional protection. And she's not asking you to honor her sister. She's asking you to honor an idealized version of family she was raised to believe in. Point number three: the guilt you feel is inherited, not chosen. And so when your mom says, Lola would want you to, or she's still my sister, or you still have to acknowledge her, she is pulling from utang na loob, the debt of gratitude, or hiya or shame, pakikisama, maintaining harmony, or reverence for the elders. But here's something that I want you to notice. Your mom, you said that your mom doesn't talk to her either, right? Unless she has to. That is generational guilt speaking, not necessarily the truth. And your guilt is not proof you're doing something wrong. In fact, your guilt is proof you were raised to prioritize other people's comfort over your own safety, which is very common in Filipino culture nowadays, right? And this is something that I often hear. Right, point number four: you are allowed to choose emotional protection over cultural performance. Let me say this clearly: you do not owe anyone emotional access to you who has consistently harmed you, even if they're family, even if they're older, even if they're your auntie. And you are not being disrespectful, you are being protective. And protection is not dishonor. That is healing. That is healing your inner child. And here's also a culturally gentle boundary script that you may want to use if you want to try it. You can you can say something like, if she approaches me, you can tell your mom that, sure, I'll be civil, just like you said, but I cannot initiate that would cross my limit. Or you can also tell your mom that I will acknowledge your presence, but I will not engage beyond what is safe for me. And these responses are respectful without self abandonment. I understand it's easily said than done. And this is something that you might need to practice in front of the mirror, because I know in our culture, we have porous boundaries. Unfortunately, we are not taught to kind of have that healthy boundary, right? But there's a Filipino way of practicing that Filipino boundary. And hopefully, I'm showing it through the examples that I'm giving you. Okay. Point number five: you don't need to fix a relationship that existed before you were born. Your mom and your auntie have decades of unresolved tension. That is their relationship, not yours. And you are not responsible for repairing sibling wounds, or managing adult conflicts, carrying family burden, maintaining tradition at the expense of your own mental health. You were allowed to step out of cycles that never belonged to you. And if you do attend the same event, maybe you can think of a plan. And maybe it can look something like this: enter it with intention, not fear, not guilt, but clarity. And you get to decide the level of engagement. The next one is stay with your safe people. Consider your mom, your sister, maybe your safe cousins. And then you can also offer neutral acknowledgement. If you want to, sure, we can smile, we can nod, we can say magandang araw po, but that's it. Nothing more. You don't have to engage anything more than those kind of like civil, like decency of like acknowledging the other person. Next one is you might also want to avoid emotionally charged conversations, right? You are not there to kind of be the therapist of the family. You are there to protect your peace and to also enjoy the event. And then, by the way, you can also consider having an exit plan. And this isn't avoidance, it's really self regulation. You are not responsible for being the bridge. And I know that a lot of us, can relate to this. Like I said, I can relate to this. And this is something that I also want you to reflect on why this feels so heavy. Because especially if you are a Filipino living in the diaspora, and I know that a lot of like my Instagram followers, we have now 107,000 followers in Instagram, and majority of the followers that we have there are Filipinos from the diaspora. Majority are Filipino Americans. So especially if you're Filipino in the diaspora, or Filipino American, Filipino Canadian, Filipino Australian, apparently we also have followers from Australia. You live between two culture, the two culture codes, and your body tries to obey both at the same time. That's why sometimes it's like, the I created this post where there is this person traversing into rivers, where they're kind of like riding this bangka or the boat, and they're traversing into rivers. It's so true, right? Especially for those who are living in two cultures. We have the Filipino culture code, which means we have to respect our elders, we can't shame the family, we have to keep the peace, family comes first, and then stay silent to avoid conflict. And then you have the Western culture code. If you are living in a very Western, like country, like here in the United States, we protect our mental health, we set boundaries. We have this thing called emotional safety matters, or respect is earned, and then distance is healthy. Sometimes we also have followers who are third culture kids, right? The nervous system is really trying to honor all of these worlds, all of these two worlds that are colliding. And this is why you feel so torn. This is why we feel guilty. This is why the thought of seeing your auntie already exhausts you. And this is also why, Filipino Americans or Filipinos in the diaspora rarely heal by themselves, because our wounds are created in relationship, so that we need other relationships to process all of these different nuances. And this is why community healing matters. So, with us Filipinos, our wounds are really relational, cultural, intergenerational. It's tied to shame, it's tied to loyalty, tied to silence. And these are not individual wounds, they're kapwa wounds. And the kapwa wounds rarely heal in isolation. And we need spaces where we don't have to translate ourselves or explain ourselves. We need rooms where our pain makes sense without a long explanation. We need community that reflects back, hindi ka nag-iisa, you're not alone. And this is one of the reasons I also created the Healing Collective. This is our weekly Filipino healing space where we can unpack this kind of pain gently, slowly, and with people who understand it from the inside, not having to have to thoroughly explain it, right? And not because you have to join, but because you deserve not to carry this wound by yourself anymore. And so this is also how the Healing Collective supports exactly this kind of pain, because in the Healing Collective, we process real Filipino family conflict with compassion, with cultural nuance. Like this Tita trauma, it's so common. The auntie conflict, or the estranged siblings, or estranged parents, family cold wars. These are things that not a lot of people really talk about, or nor we are allowed to, because like we will feel like we will be disrespected, right? Like the guilt, the shame, the cultural pressure. In this auntie situation that you mentioned, it's actually one of the top three reasons people join, because not because they're weak, but because they're tired of healing alone. So you're not alone, you're not dramatic, you're also not being disrespectful. You are carrying a cultural wound that many of us inherited. And by the way, if you are also not ready for a community, for those who are watching this on YouTube, there's also a solo path if you're not ready to join the collective healing. And that's completely okay, because we heal in many different entry points, or we are also like in our healing stages. And it's very different for a lot of us, right? And that's why I also created this ebook this year called Roots and Rebirth. This is the gentle, self paced ebook for Filipino inner child healing, designed for those who want to start quietly, privately, and at their own rhythm. It's really a bridge, or something that you can return to again and again as you reconnect with yourself, your story, and your cultural roots. The link is going to be in the description if that feels like it's the right next step for you. Okay. So, if today's question around Filipino family boundaries and emotional safety touched something deep in you, I really would want you to watch this next video called Watch This Before You Burn Out, the Kapwa Aligned Boundaries. This is the perfect follow up for what we just talked about, because it teaches you how to set boundaries in a way that still honors culture, our kapwa, and honors your inner child without burning yourself or betraying yourself. If family dynamics strain you, that video is absolutely your next step. Again, thank you for joining me this Thursday for Ask Dr. Net Thursdays. And if you have a question you'd like to ask me next week, comment it below. Well, actually, don't comment it, but you can use the form that we will link below in the description. Maraming salamat. This is Dr. Net reminding you that our healing is our resistance. I'll see you in the next one.